more confidence. Education gives you confidence.
Yes, absolutely. And the first deal is the toughest one, right? Once you get through that first one, then it's like, okay, I can do this again. Like the training wheels are off. It's all it's all the same motion. The numbers get bigger. It's called commas and zeros. You know what I mean? Like it's all just a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Tanner. So just wanted to do a quick intro for podcast did yesterday with Franke. You were out gallivanting in the ice storm and all that stuff. So it was a good interview. So as far as Grant goes, he's got a strong why, and that's kind of what we dove into. He's a real estate investor, but I tried to stay a little more clear of that and talk more about why, because I think that's what people kind of care about. Like, I think if you have a strong why, you can do pretty much anything. So, but he's an author, and it's his book he left. It's an unlikely investor. So, overall, good podcast. He's a little different in that he started investing in smaller markets, like $30,000, $20,000, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Submarkets?
Yeah, well, like the population. That's the word I couldn't think of.
Yeah.
Beatrice area. So that's where you got to start. I think his episode proves to people that with a strong why and just commitment to your cause, you can do pretty much anything. So, and we dive into other things. He's working with Brandon Turner, coaching. He's obviously wrote a book that was part of his 2024 goals, was to get a book out there. So he's done all that, and look forward to seeing what he has in store next 10 years. So I think he's been investing for about 8. So
very cool,
pretty good. So
yeah, definitely look forward to reading his book.
Yeah, it's I didn't know he kind of went into it, or I don't know if it was on camera or not, but so he self-published it, but he sells it through Amazon, and so you get what's called an author copy. You basically pay $3 for the printing. So
nice.
And I don't know what it sells for, but yeah, I thought it was interesting that you can. I didn't know I heard the term author copy, but I didn't know what it was. So
right,
it's basically you still pay for the printing, but you get it for pennies on the dollar.
Absolutely. What did he say about the differences between investing in a submarket versus major MSA?
So pretty much it was cash flow versus appreciation. So his why was to get out of the railroad and be home with his family, and you're not going to do that with appreciation.
Absolutely, and that's one of the biggest things that I tell people when they're looking at those smaller markets is don't expect it to double and triple in value. Like that town might have a 30,000 population, but 20 years ago it had a 30,000 population.
So yeah, they're not going up in value very fast.
But they're typically, especially the older ones here in Nebraska, they're stable. They have one or two major suppliers, and the institutional investors won't touch it. There's some areas in submarkets around Omaha that you'll see a bigger private equity fund go and just buy an apartment building or build an apartment building is more common from what I've seen. But there's a lot more opportunity for the new investors. And those new investors are trying to crack in Omaha, where there's a lot of competition and a lot of people that know what they're doing. So it's hard to break in when you don't have a lot of capital to start out. So I think, looking in your local market, it's that advantage of geographical, if you have familiarity with that submarket, you could be the king of that town.
Yeah, and he lives south of Lincoln, so for him, Beatrice wasn't far, so
absolutely
makes sense. So,
and it's people don't realize all the things that make it more difficult. I looked at a couple deals in Beatrice, and I don't know any property managers in that area, so I probably have to self-manage. I don't know any contractors that'll go that far out of the way. The scale of everything is more difficult, and I was looking at a 40-unit apartment building down there, and the numbers were great, but the personnel problem that I didn't have a solution for.
Yeah. Oh, he's actually pulling out of Beatrice and moving everything to Lincoln. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit on the podcast, but that's more so he can scale. He was in Stewart, something like that. Beatrice and Lincoln.
Yep.
He's got 120. Well, it's kind of hard to manage that in 3 different areas, and he's self-managing. So
Yeah, well, good for him.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, look forward to it.
Yeah. And with that, we'll see you off into the episode. Boom, 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 boom.
Welcome, Grant. I appreciate you showing up. So,
Happy to be here.
So I told you I guess I heard a rumor about you. I wanted to get some clarity on. So you were Bigger Pockets 998 or something.
Yes.
I heard you were the reason the host got fired from your episode.
Down. Yeah, it all went downhill after I was on there. It's pretty strange though. That was a crazy, because I didn't know what was happening when we recorded the podcast. Yeah. Then after I recorded, all that stuff came out, and I was like, "Holy smokes!"
Yeah, because you were one of the last with Dave and Rob.
I was
David
on.
And Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, so I didn't do David and Rob. I had Henry.
Oh, did you?
So it was when that whole thing was going down. I got thrown in with Henry like the day of, and
so I haven't watched it obviously, but it was Henry and who else, or is it just one?
Just Henry, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is kind of interesting.
It was really unique. I was like, something's going on. Something seems fishy here.
Interesting. So you were recently on there, like I said, and I think it was 998 or something like that, which I don't know where they're at now, but was that your first podcast that you did? No,
that was probably like podcast 5 or 6.
Okay.
That was kind of one of the big ones I wanted to get on. So I started doing some other ones before that. But like that one, and then Brandon's Better Life ones, like those, and Keith Weinhold's, who I just did. Those are the ones I listened to a lot when I was learning in the beginning. Okay. It was kind of that bucket list moment for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. So let's back up. So I first met you, first talked to you, I don't know, maybe 15 months ago or something like that. And I had no idea who you were. I don't think anybody knew who you were. Yeah. Now you've been on 10 podcasts, roughly, some big ones. You kind of came out of the shadows. Yeah. Like you've been investing for how long?
Started in 2016. So almost 10, 8, almost 10 years. Yeah.
So what made you come out of the shadows?
Really, I don't know, because like I'm really comfortable just being at home and just doing my own thing. At the Better Life Tribe, so we're both part of the Better Life Tribe. I made a goal last year at the end of 23 to write a book in 2024. So I did that, and then that really just kind of forced me to get very uncomfortable and talk to people.
And that's probably around the time I first met you was through Better Life.
Through Better Life, yeah.
Yeah, they have pods, and so we got grouped together in a pod, but our pod was dissolving and moving to another pod, so we kind of went separate ways.
Yeah, everything got split up there. But yeah, it just it really just challenged me to get out of my comfort zone and go out into the public and talk about what I've been doing. So it's been fun. It's just not something I'm used to doing.
Gotcha. Yeah. So was this what kind of made that a goal? Was it just a self-imposed?
Yeah, just self-imposed. I wanted a goal that was going to be challenging for me. Like, not like I want to go to the gym 3 times a week, or I want to stay off my phone. I wanted something that was like off the wall, super challenging for me. That's going to challenge me as a person to grow and be better.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. So you said, we'll kind of back up the clock. You said you started in 2016-ish, so 8-9 years.
Yep.
Why did you get into real estate?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was a conductor for BNSF Railways. I started out when I was 19, so that was around 2006. It's a great job if you don't have any kids or a wife. So I got married, and I was like, this job kind of sucks. And then I started having kids, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I was looking around. I mean, I was looking at everything. I was like, I could be a postmaster or a postman. Like I needed out of that job just because of the time suck of it. You're always on the road, always on call, those sort of things. So I was Googling around. I'm always like somewhat handy, like enough to be dangerous. So I was like, I'll be a GC. And then I stumbled upon a Bigger Pockets podcast of a landlord that a handyman that became a landlord. And he recommended a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I went out to Barnes & Noble, bought that, and then that was the start of the journey.
Changed your whole life.
Changed my life, yeah.
So how quickly from reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad to jumping in real estate was it?
I took about 9 to 12 months of education. So I read that in 2015, and we didn't buy our first one till October of 16.
Okay.
So it it takes me a while to get comfortable, and I had enough education at that point. I knew my numbers were solid on what I was doing, so I felt more comfortable with it. But I didn't run and jump right away into it. It took me some time to get comfortable.
Okay, so we'll jump forward to something. Things you brought up, education. So now you've been on these podcasts. You've met Brandon Turner. You're part of one of his masterminds. All this, and then you were asked to teach.
Yeah.
So now you're teaching. So I kind of want to tie the two into it. How big is education, both receiving and now giving education, for you? Like,
yeah. I mean, receiving education is huge. Like that's what gets you comfortable with it. You see a lot of people that kind of come and go in real estate. They're like, oh, this seems cool. And then they get into it like, it's too much for me. Like, but getting that solid sense of the numbers, how things work, makes all the tough times a lot more easy because you can underwrite deals quicker. The numbers are real. Like that's the biggest thing people get is to underwrite a deal and they just kind of lose confidence in it. They self-sabotage it. I still do that myself. I can self-sabotage a deal really easily and make it so I don't do anything. But having that foundation, that knowledge underneath is huge.
I think anytime you do a deal and say you start off with a $150,000 single family home somewhere and you're going to be nervous.
No.
And I remember my first deal. I don't remember how much I ended up backing out of it because found some stuff on inspection, but I remember it was under 200,000 and I was scared to death.
Yep.
I don't think I slept for like 2 days. And now you do larger deals and that fear is still there, but it's different.
It's different.
And so I think it's going back to the education piece. It's just more confidence. Education gives you confidence.
Yes, absolutely. And the first deal is the toughest one, right? Once you get through that first one, then it's like, okay, I can do this again. Like the training wheels are off. It's all it's all the same motion. The numbers get bigger. It's called commas and zeros. You know what I mean? Like it's all just a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So let's back up. So 2015, you pick up Rich Dad, Poor Dad, buy your first property in October 16, I think you said.
Yep.
What was that education piece look like for you back then? Because there wasn't YouTube University. There wasn't all these masterminds.
Yeah, it was a lot of just books and podcasts. Bigger Pockets podcast that's what I listened to. Keith Weinhold's podcast, the Fed Keys, like all those people, just all the knowledge they were putting out on podcasts was huge to me. I listened to that while I was driving to and from work. I was never a reader, but like that turned me into a reader. I was always reading Brandon's books or Ken McElroy's books or, whatever I could get my hands on about real estate. I was fully obsessed with it. So it took, like I said, 9 to 12 months of just solid education, getting super comfortable underwriting deals. And then we took our first one down in October.
And what was that? It was a single
just
family?
A duplex. Yeah, duplex in Lincoln, up, down duplex. And looking back, like I didn't own it for that long. It was one of those first deal things where I got nervous right away. But again, once you get there, your first one, like that's the toughest one. And then after that, you're just off to the races.
Do you ever go back and look at it and see what it's worth today?
No. I had enough heartache with it. And I'll drive by it and I'm like, I don't even want to know about that property.
Yeah. Because my first house that I ever bought, personal home, I look at it every once in a while. I was like, man, I should turn that into a rental.
Yeah.
Close to the base. I just sold it outright and help me get into the house I'm living in now. So, but I bought it at such great deals. 2008, 2009, it was a foreclosure. It only been built like maybe 5 years. It wasn't your typical starter home.
Yeah.
But because of the recession, I was able to get into it, selling it for quite a bit more a few years later.
Yeah.
And it all worked out. But man, I've sold twice, I think, since then. And I've seen it because you set up Zillow notifications.
Yeah.
So we see I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. Hindsight's always 20/20. But like I said, like that capital that you sold that with helped you get into your real estate you're in now. Yeah. So I don't ever look back and wish to change it, but it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Yeah. So 2016 by duplex and you're off to the races.
Yeah.
What's that look like for you? Because you had a strong why. Your kids how old was your oldest then?
My oldest would have been 5.
Okay.
Yep. And then my youngest would have been 2. So, like I said, my why was my kids and my wife. Like it was that was my everything. Like I was doing everything I could to get out of the railroad to spend more time with them.
Because the railroad, kind of go into that. Because like you're gone for fairly large periods of time.
Yeah.
Mine, I know there was a strike or something a couple of years ago, and they were saying that, like, the way they treat you isn't like the money's good, but the expectations aren't.
Oh yeah, the money's phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
it's great money, but you're trading your time for money in the strongest sense of that term. So the basic trip. So there's two different ways at the railroad. Like you can work on the road, which is where you see the people on the trains, or in the yard, like building the trains. When you're on the road, you're gone for anywhere from 36, 48, sometimes 72 hours, and then you're back home for as short as 12 to 16 hours, and you go back out and do that again. I think it's gotten better since I left, like quote unquote better. Like you get more time at home, more days off, like scheduled days off. But it's on call. You can't plan out. Like I couldn't plan out Christmas right now. There's no way. So I'd always have those conversations with my family. Like, what are you doing for Christmas? I'm like, I have no idea. I'll talk to you on Christmas Eve and see where I'm at. So just getting through that phase of that with children and a wife was very difficult for me. I'm a family guy. I like to be home with my kids and enjoying things like that.
Yeah. I think having that strong why is probably, because you were able to scale it fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Starting out. So having a strong why is obviously important to your success, because say in the first 2 years, let me back up with this question. 2016, you started. How long before you became financially free to walk away from the railroad?
It was about 3.5 years.
Okay.
And those were pretty aggressive 3.5 years. We did some things too, like at the railroad, you can bid around to like different jobs because it's a union job. So I bid to like the lowest paying job just to set that standard. I'm like, if we can survive off of this, of me losing this income, then let's get.
Because your wife's still working this whole time.
Wife's still working at that time. Yeah. So I'm not supporting the whole family. I'm just, if we can replace this amount of income for me and let me leave this job and be home with the kids and be home with my wife more, then that's fantastic. So I bid down to that lowest paying job, and it took about 3.5 years during those 3.5 years, I was really working 2 full-time jobs, managing the rentals. I was doing all the work myself still, and then the railroad job as well.
So you went down to the lowest paying job.
Mm.
Well, what was that schedule like? Was it Monday through Friday, or was it?
No, it was a better schedule because it is the lowest paying job. So like it's got a little bit better schedule. If you want to make more money, you have to sacrifice more time. So I was working like afternoons. So I'd go to work at 3, get off at 11, and I had like Thursday, Friday off. So It wasn't terrible.
So you can do a couple little maintenance items if you need it in the morning.
In the morning, I'd head down to Beatrice and do stuff, and then head up to work afterwards.
Okay. And then was Beatrice where you said you had a duplex in Lincoln?
Yeah.
And just for reference, you live south of Lincoln a little ways.
Yep.
So Beatrice is 30, 45 minutes south of Lincoln?
Mm-hmm.
So was Beatrice kind of your main starting area?
It was, and I did that on purpose. So I bought that first duplex in Lincoln. It cash flowed well, like it was a base hit. And I was starting to look around, and I found a duplex in Beatrice on Craigslist back when that was something you could actually do. So I found that property, and it was a duplex that cash flowed like crazy. Like it was good money. So I started looking around at that market, and I was like, this is an untapped cash flow market. At that time, I didn't care about appreciation or equity gain. Like I needed cash flow yesterday.
Because of your why? Because you wanted out of, you were ready to be home with the family.
Everything was about cash flow for me. So I'm like, there's people that don't love Beatrice, especially locally. It's been a great town for me. There's a cash flow town.
20, 30,000 people roughly?
Yep. They've got a college. It's an ag town. There's a good hospital down there. Like there's jobs. All those smaller towns kind of get crapped on sometimes, but they're pretty good.
Yeah, I've only been there once. I bought a used vehicle.
Okay.
And I had to drive down there to go look at it and buy it. But I forgot it was used car dealership had it for sale. And so I went down there and bought it. It's the only time I've ever been there. So I can't say much about it.
It's not a bad town. Like I said, it's a cash flow town. And that's really where I got my financial freedom, was from Beatrice, from that smaller town. So I found that duplex on Craigslist, and it happened to be a retired railroader that was selling a duplex. Had a really great relationship with them through the closing, and I showed up, did everything I said I was going to do. I found out he had 5 single-family homes that were clearly rentals. So we were talking at the closing table. It's like, hey, if you ever want to sell these, let me know. He ended up selling those to me, seller financing, pretty good terms.
All five
of those
one
single
deal?
families in one deal. Yeah. So that really set that hockey stick off for us. So
Talk about seller finance and the terms. What did that look like, at least then?
yeah, at that point in time, we did 10% down. So we were pretty leveraged fairly well. I think we had like 5 or 6% interest, which was, it was higher for back then. But again, that's what you're going to do when you get seller financing. Typically, you're going to pay a little bit more interest to sweeten the pot for the seller. It worked out great for him because he wanted to go to Florida and just be a retired guy. So I would still send him money every month and he wouldn't have to worry about his rentals anymore. Funny thing about that is about 2 years later, he called me. He's like, hey, I still have the bug, because he's a real estate guy. He's like, I found something I want to sell. Think you could refinance these properties and get me my capital back. So I went to the bank and we ended up refinancing those into 30-year notes, so long-term fixed debt. And with the improvements we did, we were able to pay off 2 of those properties and then put the debt on 3. So we had 2 properties free and clear, 3 properties with debt on them after 2 years of owning them.
It's not bad for 2 years.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So you said it cash flowed quite a bit.
Yeah.
What was how were the terms set up that made it to cash flow? Because you were higher interest rate. Is the rent just that much higher there compared to the purchase price?
Yeah, absolutely. So like when I bought these, I mean, we were buying the houses for like $40,000 and they were renting for $600 at the time, and then in my improvements, I'd go in, we were getting $800 for them and I paid $40,000 for them. So that's a 2% rule. That's pretty tough to find. Back then it was tough to find. Right now it's almost impossible to find something like that. So yeah, they just cash flowed really well. It was a great cash flowing town. And then once I started buying all those properties in Beatrice, then I became known as like, I'm the guy that buys in Beatrice. So we would get first dibs on duplexes that were coming up off market, and really just leaned into that BRRRR process at that time with those duplexes that were coming up.
And so, I mean, obviously we talked a couple times about stuff like this, and you do something that's a little different. You said BRRRR. A lot of people try to BRRRR out as quick as possible. Let's go in, let's take this down with high interest rate, short-term financing, go in, rehab everything, and then refinance it out. You kind of do it a different route. You take more the long-term approach.
Yeah.
Kind of explain that and kind of your rationale behind it more.
Yeah. So we've done the fast BRRRRs. Like those are great when you can pull them off. They're just not always feasible, especially right now. Like it doesn't make sense to BRRRR something super fast.
I would say, especially multifamily right now.
Yeah.
So single family, you can possibly go in, either it's empty or evict them if they're non-paying or whatever it is, and do it a little bit. Because a lot of single families you'll find they're evicting people or they're selling because people aren't paying. And the current owner doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So
but the slower process for us is like we'll buy a duplex or a fourplex that's under rented, that's kind of needs updated. And then as long as it cash flows in the beginning, that's the main thing. It needs to cash flow at start. But then as natural vacancy happens, somebody moves out, we'll renovate that property, raise the rents, and then we'll continue to raise the rents on the current tenants until they move out, and then we'll renovate, get it back up to market. So it could take a year, 2 years. But after that time, we've really increased the value of the property while cash flowing the whole time with minimal stress as well. Like that's the big thing I like to talk about. I just do boring real estate. I don't want anything super stressful. If it takes a year or 2, that's fine. As long as I'm cash flowing, I'm not losing money, then we can do it the long-term way.
Okay. So your real estate was not something that you were looking to do. It wasn't like you got into it because of your why, because of your family, because you were looking for financial freedom.
Yep.
So what have you looked into other things, small business or day trading or anything else? And what was the lure of, because Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki will say, it's not a real estate book. It's a mindset book. Yep. What drove you, other than the podcast, I guess.
Yeah. To me, it was the most attainable thing at the time, right? I didn't go to college. I don't have a degree. Like I'm somewhat entrepreneurial. Like I had that bug. I had that itch that I feel like real estate kind of scratched that itch, plus the financial freedom itch for me. So yeah, I mean, I looked around at different things. Like I said, I'd be an employee for anybody at that point in time. Mm-hmm. But then once I read that book and, cash flow quadrant, all those different things, it kind of all felt like I was getting pulled towards real estate. And like I said, it was the most attainable thing at that time for me.
Gotcha. 2015, 16, different market than today.
Yeah.
Would you do it the same?
Yeah, because I think it's attainable still. It's not as easy. Back then we were finding deals. I wish I would have bought everything that I looked at back then, right? But I think it's still attainable. There's still deals out there. There's still things that you can make work. It's just how hard are you willing to work for it? How long are you willing to try to get it? It just takes longer right now probably to do it than it did back when we started.
Gotcha. So your wife still works today, but she has a more steady job, right?
Yep. So and she's a W-2 employee.
W-2 as an accountant, correct?
Accountant, yep.
And so y'all travel a lot. I know you flew out to Maui for Brandon's interview, and
we try to travel as much as we can. Her job is fairly flexible with us. If we want to take off for a week, since COVID, everybody can kind of work remote if you have to, so they kind of understand how that works. We try to take a lot of trips when we can, stay busy with kids sports and stuff too, but we try to make those memories with the kids. We went to Maui for the podcast, we've been to Disney a few times and those sort of things.
I know we were talking to go back from Cancun last weekend. Yeah. You said y'all been out there a few times, the same hotel where we stayed.
Yeah.
Resort. I guess where I'm going with that is you not only were in search of family time or freedom to be with your family, but now it's afforded you freedom to be here doing a podcast or I guess another way to say it, we don't realize what financial freedom will buy you once you have it, but you have freedom of location for your wife. You have freedom to hang out with who you want, freedom to pack up and go to Maui and do all that stuff. What types of freedoms, I guess it's Freedom Fighter podcast. So we'll go there with that. But what else did that afforded you to be able to do?
I think everybody talks about financial freedom all the time. That's the big buzzword, right? Like it's everywhere. But really what people are after is time freedom.
Correct.
Like and I didn't realize that probably until the last 2 years. I'm like, no, I wasn't. Financial freedom's great, but that's just a tool to give you time freedom. And that's the most limited thing that we have is our time. So, money is a tool to buy you time freedom, which is what I feel like it's done. And even though like my wife still works, she has zero intention of leaving. She loves what she does. She would go crazy with me at home, like trying to run our business. Like it just wouldn't work well. But like having the time freedom has allowed her to be more invested in her career. And then when she comes home, she doesn't have to worry about the kids stuff. Like, so she's more invested as a mom, as a wife. And then for me as like a dad, like I'm at all the sports things, I'm picking up, I'm dropping off from school. Like I have those time freedom things back too, that if we were both working a W-2, we just wouldn't have that.
Yeah. And it's funny because yesterday my wife was running around doing all kinds of stuff and she was going to school, or I guess she still is, but she dropped a class. She was taking one class for photography and just holidays, and she's stressed about time and all that stuff. But while we're not necessarily financially free, we're financially free enough that if she doesn't want to go to school, or like she can kind of, she has financial freedom and time freedom and all that stuff because of it. So it is interesting to see how those things start to play out, and we're not stressed about her working or not working, or so I think people always say financial freedom, but it's time freedom. It's freedom to hang out with who you want, when you want, and where you want, and things like that. And it's just, money has a hold of people's mentality, I think, and
it's really just a tool. Like it's just a tool to get you what you want. So.
Once you obtain that freedom, I know some people call level 1, level 2, level 3 financial freedom, but level 1 freedom where you can have a job or not have a job, it starts opening up your eyes to other things, other freedoms that are attainable.
Yeah.
So what's kind of hinted on it? You're in a better life. You met Brandon when we were in Denver.
Yeah.
What was that in May? I think we were there.
Yep.
He wrote the foreword for your book, which is right there, which we can kind of dive into.
Yeah.
But what is next for you? You joined his mastermind. What's kind of your vision there?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you go to those masterminds, just like any meeting when you go to, like when we go to Better Life Summit or something, like you come home, you're all fired up and jacked up, like I'm going to take on the world. And then I get home, I'm like, I kind of like my boring life. I don't really want to syndicate 15,000 units and all that stuff. So really for me, like it's just continuing to scale like boring real estate. I don't have a door count that I want to get to. I don't have assets under management I want to get to. Like it doesn't matter to me. We're going to still just look at boring cash flowing deals and take them down. And as long as that still allows me to be a good husband and dad and person in the community, then I'm just going to continue on that track. I don't ever want to get too stressed out to the point where like that starts to deteriorate my life of who I am and the parent I want to be and the husband I want to be.
Yeah. So why join the mastermind? Why? It wasn't cheap.
No.
So why put yourself in that position to potentially have that want?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, and I ask myself that still, like to this day, like, is it something that I need? It does motivate me getting around those rooms of people that are just completely killing it in everything. Like I'm able to pick up different tips and tricks. And like, if I have a question on something, I can call any of those 50 guys and they're going to answer my call and talk to me through something like that. I just had a deal I was working on in Lincoln that I called a couple of them and we talked through some different items, and that was probably worth the price of admission there. So it's the connections you build. I think it's, there's always this thing of like not paying for education. Like there's so much information out there, which is 100% correct. You can learn almost anything about real estate on YouTube or podcast for free. There's something different about in-person learning, the motivation you get, the goals you can set, what you think is achievable, that changes when you do those things in person. Like when I joined Better Life Tribe a year ago, like I thought that was crazy that I was spending that money. I'm like, what am I going to get out of this? This is ridiculous. From that, I've met a lot of great people. I put myself out there. I wrote a book. I've been on all these podcasts. I've met a lot of great people. My portfolio has continued to scale. So it just like I can get stagnant, and I think people can get stagnant in their own ways, where I think that's where the masterminds really come in and help.
Yeah. I tell my kids this, and really anybody, but you never stop growing. If you stop growing, like you're dying, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like you don't go to kindergarten and finish kindergarten and be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Like too often I find people, they graduate high school. I'm like, I'm not going to college. I'll just go work wherever, or I'll go get a trade so they'll get a little bit further education, but then they stop.
Yeah.
I just remember my dad when I was growing up, he'd be, taking some class for he worked in the offshore, kind of similar railroad going a lot.
Yeah.
But he would have certain trainings, things that he'd have to do. And he's like, education never stopped. Like that was the one thing I remember him saying quite a bit to me. Education never stops. You never stop learning. And that kind of stuck with me, I guess. And so my mentality, like I hate school.
Yeah.
Like with the passion.
I agree.
And I'm going for my MBA right now and I still hate school.
Yeah.
Like I'm just doing it. It's VA benefits. So it's worth it to me because I'm not really paying for it other than the time. So from that standpoint, it's worth it for me. But like my kids, I got a senior in high school. I'm like, if you don't go to school, don't go to school. Like if you're going to go for a job that needs a degree, then by all means go. Yeah. But just to go to school because people tell you that's the right thing to do.
Get that piece of paper.
I don't think it is in today's market.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, I love education, but school's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So,
but like I said, like if you're not learning, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. Like I felt like that was me in like post COVID, like, you know, after lockdowns and all that stuff. Like I was just at home and I'm like, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I remember one of my buddies, Shane, text me and he's like, what are you doing? Like, what's your plans here? You know, I think that was like 2021. I told him, I was like, I'm good. You know, I'm comfortable. And him and I are like the type of people that like just motivate each other. Mm-hmm. And he lives down in Phoenix. He's like, I'm going to drive to Phoenix and kick your ass. Like you are not, that's not who you are, is just to sit down and not do anything. So I was like, all right, I got to get back out there and like start meeting people. And cause it's easy to just sit at home and not do anything, but like just putting yourself out there and meeting those people, joining the groups, I think it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, you've done a lot in the last year and a half or so.
It's been crazy. So
since making that goal and for what have been
2024 was yeah.
So we talked about education quite a bit. Talk about what you're doing and it's through the Better Life Tribe, right?
Yeah, it's First Deal is what it's called. So it's like it's just for people who have for their first deal. So it's people who have no real estate yet. And we have weekly calls with Brandon, and then we have different advisors in the group that come in and answer questions too. And then we have one-on-one calls. Like today, I'll have 2 one-on-one calls with people just to look over deals and talk through what they're going on.
So you're Brandon's teaching it.
Yeah, Brandon's at the head. So he'll do like the weekly calls, he'll come in for 15, 20 minutes and give his raw stuff like he does for Better Life. You know what I mean? And then we have different breakout groups of like, I'm the long-term rental guy. And there's a midterm rental person, short-term, pad split, you know, so we have different groups that people can pop in and pop out and ask questions for us.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think there's 6 advisors in it that are teaching the stuff. And then Brandon's got his course behind it as well. But
so it's a pre-recorded course,
then weekly calls, and then availability for one-on-one calls as well.
So do you get an availability or a accountability, whatever, coach, or how's that work? Like if I'm a long-term person, do I just set up an appointment with you to?
Yeah, you can just, any of the advisors you can call, and, you know, we'll check in. Like I know who's kind of where in the program. We'll check in with them, and I'll send them a text and just say what's going on.
Is that, I assume it's a paid for thing.
Yeah.
Do you find, you've only been doing it a couple months, but do you find people taking action through it?
It's amazing. So I don't know how many people are in there now, but we just had a weekly call yesterday and there was 70 people in there, and it's the same 70 people that show up every week. I bet there's probably 250 people in that program that just paid the money and haven't done anything yet. Yeah. But you see the people that show up and they're taking action, they're hungry, they're asking questions. And those are the people that I love just helping. I was talking to somebody the other day and like, what fills you up right now? Like what gets you excited? And really it's like, it's First Deal. I'm not making a lot of money off of this at all. Like I just enjoy talking to them because I remember what it was like to be in those shoes. Yeah. Like if I would have had that support in the beginning, like that hockey stick would have been a lot more.
So dramatic. It's funny you mentioned Brandon and First Deal and all that stuff. That's what kind of got me going. Was Brandon was at Bigger Pockets at the time. They had a webinar. I don't know if he did it monthly or quarterly or exactly, but it was called like 90 Days to Your First and Next Investment.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing I took from there. He said, basically, if you don't do it in the next 90 days, your chances of doing it just to go way down.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm doing it. Yeah. So I think that first deal I had, I'd already fallen out. I was scared. And I just said, hey, we're going for it. And this was like probably end of 21, 22. Anyhow. And by Christmas time I had under contract, I made it for I pushed the escrow out as far as I could because I was a little scared, but give myself more time, but pushed out to February 1st and then closed on my first deal February 1st. And it worked out. But if you just sit here and you watch podcasts or you pay for an education program or you read the books. And I mean, I got plenty of books around here, but knowledge without action is just waste of time.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I started doing more. I don't like, I was reading to read. I'm like, I'll 50 books, 100 books this year. Like, and a lot of this Audible. So,
yeah.
But now, like, I'm reading for the education behind it. So Cody Sanchez just had a book come out last week. So I got it last week and finishing that one up. Like this first time, I'm just reading through it. And I plan on going back with a highlighter, notepad. And what I started doing is I'll take the book, I'll highlight it, and then I'll take a picture with my phone of what I highlighted and copy it and then put it in ChatGPT.
No, nice.
And say, you know, like there's one I did. And basically I said, make me a game plan for this, like step-by-step task.
Yeah.
And just kind of taking that book and with technology today, like you can just take it to the next level.
Expand on it.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm starting to do. Like, I don't care if I read 10 books this year.
Yeah.
But it's going to be 10 books that I can take action on.
Yeah.
So
and go in detail on.
on.
That's cool.
That's one of the things that we were talking about masterminds earlier. That's one of the things that they do is you go in and you can go in deeper. You said about picking up the phone and calling somebody.
Yeah.
And I think masterminds and being around groups. So I just got back from, like I said, Cancun and was with other investors. And it's just seeing what they do and diving into a specific piece is invaluable. So I don't really know where I was going with that, but
it's contagious though too. Like even like what you just did in Cancun, I'm sure you took something away from it and it just kind of filled you up a little bit more. Like what we do as investors or entrepreneurs, like it's not for everybody. Not everybody understands like what we do or why we do it. And to get around those people that do understand that, and have the same struggles you have, it kind of fills you up sometimes.
Yeah. So I don't know how your wife, I mean, I've met her once, twice, something like that, but she was at your events that you were speaking at, but how is she with this? Because this is different for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So kind of talk from that aspect. I mean, obviously, I'm sure she was on board with your why and, you know, getting financially free. But as you grow, hey, I want to spend a whole bunch of money on a mastermind. Like, what's her mentality from this? Like, she's accountant, so she's looking at the ROI on it, or what's the story?
She is, and I'll be honest, like even from the beginning of like me getting into real estate, like I wouldn't be where I am without her. Like, and she's never gonna listen to this, so I'm not like trying to get brownie points, but really like she's been super supportive of me in the beginning when I was really working 2 jobs because she saw what the end could be for that. And then honestly, she is the one that told me to sign up for Better Life Tribe. And I was like, what am I going to get out of this? And then I got a lot out of it. And she's the one that told me to sign up for the 50. And
oh, really?
Yeah. I told her, I was like, because it's a chunk of change. And I'm like, and she's like, let's try it. The way she explained it to me, she's like, this would be a down payment on a small duplex, right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, well, you would take a risk if you could make, 10% return on that the first year. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see if you can make a 10% return on it.
So how did that work? I kind of want to unpack that because we were in Denver.
Yeah.
And they announced, I don't know if Brandon's ever publicly announced the 50, but he did it at the Better Life Tribe. He said, hey, I'm capping this at 50 people, looking for however many more people they needed. Said, we're going to have a discussion upstairs. If anybody's interested, here's the requirements for it. And you went to that, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you call your wife from there or?
No, it was later on. So I went up there and I didn't even talk to anybody from Brandon's circle. Like I just chatted with people that I knew. So it really was I think that was just to gather interest of who would qualify for it, And then I got back home. And Brandon and I had been talking there about the book and like writing the forward, and he said he would write the forward for me. I'm like, okay, cool. So I got home, and I was thinking about the 50. I was talking to my wife about it, and I actually looked online. I was just kind of snooping around at like different pictures of it on their website or something. And I saw Colin Schwartz was in it, and I knew Colin. So I texted him or I called him. I'm like, hey, what's the deal with this? And he told me he enjoyed it and he's gotten a lot out of it. So I was like, okay, I'd be interested in learning more. So then Colin connected me with Brandon through text, and then we just hopped on the call and chatted through it, and I signed up.
Gotcha. And what I like about the 50, and this past week in Cancun was my first one kind of like that, but it's more you mastermind, but you spend time with people.
Yes.
And so you guys go 50 people. I assume not everybody can make it every time, but you have quarterly. Is it quarterly?
Quarterly, yep.
And so you went to Seattle. Did you go to Vegas or something?
Vegas was before I joined, so we did Seattle, and then we just did Phoenix.
Yeah. So you go around to these places and bring in another entrepreneur that's doing stuff, kind of coaching session.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're there with Brandon, but it's community.
Yes.
It's not only the education piece. It's building communities, building friendships, it's building all that stuff. And I think that's one thing I've noticed post-COVID is people are yearning for community, for connection.
Yeah.
Like we had a year, whatever it was, I don't remember how long it was, but shut in, and people are like, man, I need people more than I realize.
Yeah.
And so I think hopefully as we continue to come out of COVID, that continues to grow and stuff like that. But community is huge. And so I really like that Brandon's building that. And
it's nice because so the first day we always do like a mastermind for the whole day, right? And he brings in some big, like in Phoenix was Ken McElroy was there and talked to us. Like that's awesome that we get to talk to somebody like that. And then after that, it's just a guys only dinner. So the 50 is, people are going to get upset. It's only men. So it's men only in the 50. And then after that, we do a man only dinner where it's just us drinking, talking, talking about business, talking about life and everything. And then the second day we go out and do something. That's usually when the wives or something come around as well. But you really do get around that sense of other guys that are struggling with, anxiety, or they're struggling with their wives or their kids doing something. Like you get to build those relationships because everybody on social media is completely full of crap, right? And everybody's fake. But then you see these people and like, oh no, you're a real person who has real stuff going on too. Yeah. And it's kind of nice everybody kind of lets their guard down a little bit and you talk about real things.
So I wish I could remember what book I was reading, but it was, actually I do think I remember, but anyhow, they asked a question. It was like an interview question for a job. It said, if you were an onion and I unpeeled the first 3 layers, what would I find? And it's like a question that people don't think of.
Yeah.
And like, it makes you stop and think and like, kind of go in, because when you look at somebody on social media, we'll put this on social media, it'll be on YouTube with the video edits and the messed up portion that I don't know why I cut out, but like it's just not 100% real.
Yeah.
So, we don't really edit these other than cutting out me running around trying to find a new cable.
Yeah.
But people, I'll go back to when we were in Denver. I seen somebody and they have a fairly big social media presence, and she was taking a picture with Brandon. They were like 15 feet away from me, something like 10 feet away from me. And I seen her take like 17 photos to get the perfect one with the perfect lighting and everything. And then it was on Instagram, 20 minutes later or whatever it was, next day, whatever. And it's just not.
It's not genuine.
It's not genuine. It's not authentic. It's, and Brandon was, Brandon knows her and was good about, taking all those photos. I was like, that would drive me absolutely crazy. Like, you get one chance.
Yeah.
Like,
we'll talk when we're done. I think I know who you're talking about, but we won't say it here.
But that's you see that so often, and that's one of the things I like about podcasts, because it's a little harder to hide.
Yeah.
Like, I'm stumbling through my words to come up with a question, like, that's me.
Yeah.
Like, this is just more authentic and to a degree. Like,
I saw something. I think I probably saw it on Instagram or something, but like, if you look at somebody's like curated photos from like that one girl with Brandon, like that one great photo that was awesome, there's 20 other photos that they threw away in the trash that they didn't deem good enough, but they had to find that one. So you see everybody's like perfect life, and there's 20 other things in the trash that they're just hiding from you.
Yeah. The more I go to these, like, you can discern people that are authentic,
very
people
quickly.
that aren't authentic.
Yeah.
And there's people. I came home from Denver when we were in there and unfollowed people just because I'm like, you're
not real.
I have a conversation with you and you're full of it.
Yeah.
So
that's one thing I'll give Brandon credit for. He, as I've gotten to know him, he is the same person on the internet as he is in real life, and it's almost weird. It's like, how is this true? But
that's what the lure is to him. That's the draw to him. That's, like, there's other people that, and to some degree, I mean, we'll use Brandon's beard as an example. Like, that's his thing to get notoriety.
Yeah.
Dan Martell was, when you went to Seattle, that's who y'all spoke with.
Yeah.
He wears a blue shirt every day.
Oh, no shit. He does.
Like, that's his thing.
I never realized that.
Yeah. Ryan Pineda, his hair.
Yeah.
Like, he used to dye it all the time, to get people talking about his hair. Now you just lose it one color, not natural. But like, everybody has their one thing that kind of, I mean, I wear a black shirt, but that's just because I'm too lazy to.
I have no hair. That's my thing.
But like, there is that little bit of sense of, but you have to be known for something.
Yeah.
Like, Brandon has, he's branded the Beardy Brandon label for, he's got coffee and, different things. So it works for him.
Yeah.
And it's his
stick.
His stick.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, but do you have any big plans? So we're at tail end of 2024, going into 2025. You've already written your book, Unlikely Investor, which what's your big thing for 2025?
I haven't. So we're going to do our goal setting in a week or two. So I still have a couple. So I don't have my big goal yet. I really I loved writing the book. I loved doing these podcasts, and I love meeting all those people. But I feel like it kind of took my eye off the ball with real estate some, because it takes a lot of time to do all that stuff. So I really want to focus in on the real estate, and that's not even buying stuff. Like, I want to tighten the screws of what I'm doing, clean up the management side more, just make everything run more efficiently, more profitably. So that would probably be, I think my goal is going to be around that this year, more business side than
operational excellence.
Operational excellence. That's a very good one. I might steal that from you.
So that's when people aren't growing, that's what they're doing. They're focusing on operational excellence.
I do want to grow, but I want to make sure it's like I focus on what got me here,
So y'all, selfish question here, but at the 50, do y'all focus on things like that? Like, I mean, you mentioned Colin earlier. Colin's got 2,500 doors, so obviously he's got management and all that's syndicated. But he's been there. He's done a little bit more. Do they say these are kind of the best practices that took me? Because we haven't talked about it, but roughly 100 doors.
Yeah.
If you want to go to 200, if you want to double that in the next 3 years or whatever. Do they talk about stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a lot of what that masterminding day is about operational stuff. And I'm definitely the smallest fish in that pond, so I'm just sitting there soaking up all these guys that have great businesses, have 20, 30 employees. It's just me and a VA right now. So I'm a lot of that. What we talk about is operational stuff. Like, what's the best practice for this? How do you handle a team this way? So, if I do want to continue to grow that way and hire somebody on, which probably is something that I should do this next year, like, it's a great thing to be around those people, just taking in all their best practices and where they screwed up and where they should have done this better.
So you have a VA that oversees most of your management.
Yeah.
What would you hire for next?
It's probably going to be like a maintenance tech.
Okay.
I think that would be, so we have 120 doors now, and we're looking at a couple more packages that are going to get fairly bigger. So I think we're at that point where I can stomach a full-time maintenance person.
We started earlier. You bought a lot of stuff in Beatrice initially. Yeah. You're selling off some of that, or sold off most of it, and moving predominantly to Lincoln?
That's where we're going now is I'm selling off my Beatrice stuff and just getting it all into Lincoln, merely for management purposes. Just so, because the other thing too, like if I have 40 units in Beatrice and 40 units in Lincoln and 40 units in Seward, like that's tough for me to hire a full-time maintenance guy that can drive a 2-hour radius each day. That doesn't make a whole lot of logistical sense. So just trying to shrink the footprint of where I manage is kind of my goal.
Are you shrinking to grow? Like when I say shrink, market wise, are you shrinking to grow or shrinking to go back to our word, operational excellence?
So both. So I think shrinking to grow is a very good term. Like I'm shrinking my footprint to grow my footprint in Lincoln and Seward. Like those are going to be my two markets. And it's same thing for operational excellence. I think if I have everything in those two markets, I think it's going to be a lot easier to manage, maintenance wise, showings wise, snow, all that stuff is just going to be a lot easier just if I'm shrunk down.
Yeah. Snow.
It's terrible.
Yeah. That's
so expensive.
So expensive. Yeah. I guess one thing, and if you're in the Midwest and it's around this area, like I just dread snowfall.
Oh, it's terrible.
Like I got not the bill, but the
bid or whatever.
Yeah, bid for this year, and I'm just like, I'm like, I hope it never snows.
That one, I think 2 years ago, where we had that crazy amount of snow, and it just stuck around forever. I remember it was probably right around now where it started snowing. And I remember it started snowing on Christmas, and my wife's like, "Oh, that's so beautiful." I'm like, "That's like $1,000 for every inch that falls." So I hope you love that snow out there.
Yeah, snow is one of those things that you wouldn't think it costs so much money. But man, I need to buy a landscaping company just to service my own snow and lawn.
Kind of what I've with the the full-time maintenance person. If that person if we get them a truck with a blade and bring on a help to do sidewalks, like that would probably save me a substantial amount of money.
You can almost pay for that full-time thing.
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier about Cody Sanchez, and so I joined her group as well a while back, and now under contract for one of her big things she talks about is look at your P&L and see where you spend money.
Mm-hmm.
So electro, HVAC, plumbing, obviously.
Yeah.
And real estate is a big expense. So I under contract for a plumbing company, and
cool.
Hopefully close beginning of 25 is kind of my big one for 25.
Awesome.
But landscaping or some kind of lawn service, snow removal, I'm like, that's got to be high up on the list next, because been looking at one. It was I thought it was overpriced. I just saw this morning that it's under contract. So
where do they find? Where are those listed at? Is it like
this one? I don't know if it's on Biz by Sell or not.
Oh, so there's a website that
there is. It's called Biz by Sell. So it's basically like LoopNet or MLS or something, Zillow.
So you're going to be just operating it because you don't have any like plumbing background.
I don't have any plumbing background, so it's I can't say the company or anything. We're still under NDA, but I will be buying 75%.
I'm just kidding.
So that one might be a little too large. Yeah. I don't know. That one's a franchise, so it might not be that bad. Yeah. But so I'm buying 75%, and the current owner staying on.
Oh, nice.
But he has he just runs the business. He doesn't. he doesn't run the office side of things very, very much. So I'll bring in a lot of systems, processes, and building that stuff out.
That's cool. I won't talk to you about that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. That's my one thing for 2025 it'll be the largest deal I've done. So I'm buying the building with it as well. So it's
cool.
13,000 square foot industrial. So it'll be
nice. That's awesome, man.
So
congrats.
Hopefully if everything goes right, beginning of January, I'll be done as far as purchasing for 2025.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes.
Cool.
But yeah, it's controlling your expenses. There's a guy, he owned Dino's. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. He passed away. Dino Storage.
Okay. Yeah.
And they own thousands of things, but I've talked to people that worked for him previously. He went and he had his maintenance people. He bought a dump truck.
Oh.
And he'd buy the big bins and put them at his properties. And once a week, when his maintenance guys would go pick up all the trash.
Take it to the dump.
Take it to the dump. But save them money.
Yeah. And
it's just looking at all those low efficiencies. Colin was good. I think he was one of Colin's mentors for a while. But there's all kinds of ways to save money.
Yeah.
It's just how crazy do you want to get?
Yeah.
But it helps you scale.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
that's cool.
Yeah. Talk about your book a little bit, The Unlikely Investor.
Yeah. So it's a book, and the first half is probably more mindset stuff, which when I was writing it, I didn't know I was going to like writing about so much. I really thought I'd like writing about the cash on cash return and this is how you fill a vacancy, but it didn't really sink into me like how much that's affected me when I was going through it, like knowing my why and setting goals. That really allowed me to scale up a lot faster than I probably would have. The mindset did, because I knew why I was doing it, because pipes are going to break and tenants are going to be tenants. So things are going to go wrong. So knowing why you're doing it makes all that stuff just so much easier, So first part is about that. Then we get into like kind of finding funding, and then a little bit of the property management side. I could probably write a whole book on that. So I didn't want to just overwhelm the whole book with property management stuff. But so just kind of the basics of getting started.
Yeah. So unpack mindset a little bit, because we talked about your first deal, how scary it is. And, the whole first half of your book's about mindset. I think that's the number one thing. So we're just talking about the plumbing company.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, I'll mention it, and they're like, what do you know about plumbing? I'm like, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I've changed out some lines, I can do some stuff, but like, I don't know anything about it. I don't know about angle of water, make sure the pipes are at a certain angle. Like, I could be making up something right now. Like, I really don't know. But that mindset of I don't need to know to be able to run a business is why I'm capable of doing it, I guess. So kind of unpack that a little bit. Like, how much does mindset really mean?
It's huge. I mean, like, the big thing I talk about is like my why. Like, my why is my kids and my wife, and things, like I said, things go wrong. So like having that why makes those things easier to deal with. Yeah, it sucks. I had 2 ACs go out in the same month last summer. Like, that's not cheap. That's like $10,000.
I'm about to say.
Yeah. So there's certain months I'd be better at the railroad for income wise, but my why of like, okay, it's fine. Like, this month sucks. Next month will be fine. It'll average out, but I'm still home with my kids. I still made it to all their baseball games that month and their softball games that month. We still went on vacation that month. Like, it's your why. It's knowing why you're doing it. Just keeps you stronger through all that stuff.
Yeah. I assume you don't take a monthly check. You kind of just,
we just,
as it comes
and goes, we'll go on vacation and the company will pay for it or something like that. But
random question based on what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know for me, like, mindset's huge. And like, I wake up in the morning and try to read the Bible first thing in the morning. That's kind of where my, kind of settle my mindset, because, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, or, whatever you're reading, and the kind of just, that's kind of where I fall back to. And it helps me not be fearful because I know that there's something larger, your why. Like I watched, actually, I think it was with Tim Tebow interview when Brandon interviewed him, and Tim made the comment. He's like, I don't want to get to heaven and be like, whew, I'm safe. He's like, I want to run in there. I want to be dog tired. I want to be full of mud and just know that I played with all I had. Yeah. And that's kind of, I think he might play a little harder than me. But,
I think he played pretty dang hard.
Yeah. I took a lot from that comment, and at the end of the day, it just comes back to mindset. I mean, he's got years of high level athletic endeavors that has helped his mindset, but it's getting around people, watching that podcast and just doing stuff like that helps elevate your mindset. Yeah. So what are some of the things that you do other than the 50 and stuff to make sure that, is it book? Is it like, what helps you what helped you grow your mindset, I guess I should say?
Okay. Yeah. So like the goal setting thing has been huge. I haven't been as good at it this year, but like the habit tracking, that's the whole reason I got through that book and got where I am. And then I get done with the book and I haven't done as well, So the habit tracking thing is huge because like you can waste a whole week and not know where your time went.
So kind of unpack that, the habit tracking. I know that's one of Brandon's big things.
Yeah. The habit tracking is just, so you say you're going to do these things this week. Like, what are you going to do? Okay, then track those habits and see how much you do. Because I could say every Monday, I'm going to work out 3 times this week and underwrite 5 deals a day. You could say that Monday, and then by Tuesday, you forget about it, or you don't forget about it. You're just choosing not to do it. But when it's written down and you have some accountability with somebody, whether it be your wife, spouse, partner, friend, you have accountability for it. It kind of holds you to it and kind of forces you to do it a little bit more.
So it's, I too have fallen off from it, but I used to try to write it. I tried to do it on my phone. Yeah. I hate having my phone by me at night. Yeah. So like when I go in the bedroom at night, I try to put the phone away. Yeah. Because I already don't sleep well. Yeah. So any distraction like that just make it that much worse. I'm like, I really don't want to. I don't have a lamp by my bed, so I'm like, I can't really write at night. So like, I've never. Then the next morning I try to do it. Then I'm trying to remember what I was doing. I've never come up with a good system for it.
My wife is. I kind of like told her, I was like, you should really be doing this. And she's like, all right, fine. But she's kicking ass at it now. She does it every morning, every night. I'll come out when I wake up and she's, tracking her stuff. So she's found her system. Maybe I need to get her to get me to find a system now.
For a while, I was, my wife will play on her phone at night. So we'd talk about it and I'd have her text me so that like we would do, like the 3 things for the next day. So kind of like, what's the one thing?
One thing. Yeah, what's the one thing you could do?
Yeah. So we do like the 3 things. One would be family, one personal, one business or work related. And I'd always forget by the next day. So I'd have her text me. That didn't work either. Yeah. So it lasted like 3 days.
Yeah,
so
we got to figure something out at my house.
So if anybody knows anything, they hit me up and let me know how I can better track things. Yeah. So 2025, you talked about you haven't done your big goal setting yet.
Yeah.
Do you do that with your wife?
Yeah, we do. So we started that we were on vacation in the Cayman Islands and we were just having Thanksgiving one time. It was around Thanksgiving. So we were having Thanksgiving dinner in Cayman Islands and we just grabbed the back of the menu and like wrote down what we wanted 1 year to be like, 3 years and 5 years. And it's kind of fun to look back at that now because that'd have been 2019. So that'd have been right after I left the railroad. So like to look back at that and see where we've come in the last 5 years has been fun. But yeah, we try to sit down, and if we don't do it together, we definitely consult each other on it, just on like, this is what I'm thinking and this is what we're thinking for family stuff.
And how do you do family, personal, fitness,
business, like try to do that whole wheel that Brandon kind of talks about. It was like, where are we at? Where do we want to go for those different items?
And Brendan has 10 in the wheel?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't remember what they all are.
Yeah.
So cool. Do you do a retreat, or how do y'all do it? Kind of unpack you just sit at home one afternoon.
Sit at home, yeah. Usually it's over Christmas break, and we just grab a bottle of wine and chat. Yeah. So I try to send the kids up to the grandparents' house so we can have the ability to chat and not have to parent as well. Yeah. So
be interested to see what you already wrote a book last year.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's probably going to be a little bit smaller goal.
I was about to say, you set the bar high.
Yeah,
you can't come back. Yeah, you can't come back down now. The bar's set.
Yeah,
so
I don't know. We'll see.
2 books next year.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah, I don't know if I could ever write a book. I know there's a lot of people that when they do podcasts, they ask questions and stuff, and I know you were on Rio Radio, and that's one of the questions they asked: if you write a book, or what would your next book be? I'm like, I don't ever want to write a book.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting task. It's not too bad once you get into it, and you just kind of get in the flow. But I don't know. We'll see if I do it again.
I thought about writing a book, but more like a legacy book, not like a book to be published. Like kind of. You ever read the one Ed Milet?
Oh no!
So basically, Ed's premise on it is, it takes one person in your family to change you generationally, and so you can live in poverty. Your parents could be drug addicts, whatever, and you can change your whole family trajectory. So he calls it the one, and he says, like in his family, he's the one. He's the one that changed his life or his family generationally. And so from that premise, like, I'm not like, I didn't come from a drug addict family or anything like that, but like, I want to be the one to figure out like financially things. And when I say figure out, like, finances is a game. So figure out the game is what I mean by that. Yeah. And then kind of write that down and share it generationally. The problem is things change. Like what our grandparents taught our parents and what our parents taught us doesn't necessarily
doesn't make sense at this day and age. It
doesn't. Yeah. So that's kind of my struggle there is, I say that, but the rich people have been doing the same thing for, you look at the Rockefellers and
I think that knowledge though is sprinkling down through society. Like for our grandparents to think like what we're doing is feasible was probably not common knowledge at that time. Like that's just not something you could do, so
probably goes back to YouTube University.
Yes.
That we talked about earlier. Yeah. So is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I mean, anybody that's listening that doesn't do real estate, just take action. That's my biggest.
And it does not like take action, whatever gives you energy, I guess. Like it could be, I think businesses cash flow better, especially in today.
Yeah.
Like we didn't really dive into cap rates or whatever, but you buy a building, you just bought a 20 unit, right?
Yep.
So you buy that at 8 cap, whatever. Like businesses are like 15 cap, and like they're huge.
Yeah.
It's a whole different conversation to unpack, but I think the cash flow a lot better. So
whatever,
they're more work.
Whatever fills your cup.
Yeah. So just stay away from the stock market.
Yes. Yeah.
So as far as day trading and stuff like that, that's gambling. I mean, just go to a casino at that point. It's probably more fun.
It is.
So cool. Well, Grant, I appreciate you coming in and sharing and bringing me a copy of your book. I'll have to unpack it or read it and unpack some of the stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. So, appreciate having me.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming.
Yep.
Bye.